Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, how are you?
I'm very good, Kevin. We're recording this on Wednesday morning.
We are.
It's Manchester City versus Real Madrid tonight. I'm sure many people will be watching, but I'm going to see the Dead Kennedys in Bexhill at the Delaware Pavilion, and I'm probably more excited than most Manchester City fans.
Kieran, the Delaware Pavilion is a beautiful, beautiful building.
It is.
But could you ever see the day, Kieran, when the Dead Kennedys were playing in Bexhill? That's going to take a long time for that audience to get in, isn't it? You'll probably catch the first half while they're waiting for the front row to arrive.
Yes.
It's Newsday, Kieran, and the news is that Smudge has just put a whiskered snout in my glass of water, so I might have to go and get another one. We'll take a recording pause, but that would be a very good cat pun. The big news story, Kieran, which sort of broke overnight, is involving the Manchester United takeover, and the Qataris seem to be losing patience.
Yes, this has become a bit of a trial, given that the Glazers initially put the club up for interested parties around about last September. And here we are, a week from the end of the season, and nobody's any the wiser. It did appear that Sir Jim Ratcliffe had nudged ahead, but then a lot is coming via strategic links by press agencies to individual journalists.
Right.
So those people that are sort of indirectly employed by the Ratcliffe Group have their contacts in the media, and it would appear that the Sheikh Jassim's team have exactly the same approach. So it had been reported that the Sir Jim offer was ahead because it valued the club as a whole at a higher amount, but he was only going to buy effectively 51% of it. And now there was a report, this was on Tuesday night, that came through the wire, Sky were reporting it, that Sheikh Jassim is willing to buy all of the shares and pay off all of the debt. Now, the Glazers don't care about the debt because they got the club to borrow the money in the first place. So this is very much sort of a PR pitch trying to win over the enthusiasm of the Manchester United fan base, who have reservations, I think, now with regards to the Ratcliffe bid if it involves two of the Glazers remaining at the club. But yeah, the fact that we are now into the second half of May and there's no indication as to who the preferred bidder is going to be, and it's going to take time to go through the due paperwork. Clearly, the Premier League will have to do its owners and directors test, and remember that took 18 months in respect of Newcastle United and Saudi Arabia PIF. You can understand sort of the frustration of a lot of people involved. There's a really good article in one of the papers recently. I was looking at it at the state of Old Trafford, and this is in the Financial Times. Yeah, the fact that we've got financial institutions as venerated as the FT saying, Old Trafford's a bit crap these days, I think is indicative of how far down the pecking order the stadium has become as far as the Glazers' priorities are. So it's messy. I think for those Manchester United fans who want clarity, who want to focus on improving things over the summer, we've not really made a lot of progress.
Kieran, we discussed this issue at our live show last week in Leicester, and I was surprised to learn from our two guests, Jonathan Northcroft from The Times, Jeff Peters from Talk Sport, our two very good guests, I should hasten to add, how little was actually known about Sheikh Jassim, because I assumed he would be fairly high profile. He runs or owns a bank that's worth billions of pounds, but it seems that he's quite a mysterious character.
Yes, he's very shy. I think there's only 2 photos of him doing the rounds, and those are the ones that we see. Jim Ratcliffe made a point of physically going to Old Trafford himself, and he was pictured, shaking the hands of Richard Arnold, the chief executive. Jassim sent a delegation, and we are living in a digital world, and most people have a fairly significant digital footprint these days. And he's one person who appears to have come from nowhere, has kept his head down all throughout this deal, because one of the things about owning Manchester United is that it elevates your profile infinitely. And yet he's being very, very coy indeed. Now, I'm not saying that he's another Chris Kirchner, because I'm sure that the due diligence undertaken by the Rain Group has managed to confirm his existence and his funding. But it just makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable. If you're going to buy one of the world's largest sporting brands, stroke franchises, stroke clubs, however you want to define Manchester United, you would think, and also you're trying to win over a huge fan base. Get out there and meet the people. Because some of the promises, paying off all the debt, investing in the area around the stadium, as we have seen with respect to the Mansour Group and Manchester City, are vote winners. But it does seem a strange strategy.
Well, he's going to have to provide some information eventually, Kieran, if he wants to pass the owners and directors test, isn't he?
Yes. So you have to be able to indicate who is the ultimate owner. Do you have funds, A, to get the deal through, and B, to provide a budget for the next 2 years? Now, I'm sure the minions, very well paid minions, by the way, are more than capable of doing that. But sometimes leadership requires a leader.
Oh, that's right. I'm going to write that one down. That's very that's very philosophical.
Back in the BAFTA considerations.
This next story, Kieran, when it came through, my heart really sank. I genuinely thought this was one of our hangover stories from the very first weeks of the pod. And I really not only thought, Kieran, but prayed this story had gone away, but it hasn't, and it's so depressing.
Yes, this is in respect of the deceased young man, Emiliano Sala, the professional athlete who was lost to his family, who was lost to the people that loved him, and was lost from a professional capacity as well. When the plane which was taking him back to France crashed, and he sadly died, as did the pilot, of course. When there were 2 people that lost their lives. It now appears that there was a case held at CAS, various courts, in which he was deemed to be a Cardiff City player. And therefore Cardiff were obliged to pay the first instalment of the transfer fee to Nantes. Cardiff weren't very happy about that, which, from a purely business point of view, if it had been any other asset, I would have perfectly understood.
Yeah,
we're dealing with human life here. Yeah. And having Cardiff initially said, well, he's not our player, because we don't think the paperwork had indicated that he was. Cardiff are now saying, okay, he is our player, and we are putting in a €110 million claim against Nantes for A, the transfer fee, they want it back, and B, and I quote, further consequential losses, i.e. they're effectively saying that had they signed Emiliano Sala, then they would have avoided relegation from the Premier League that season, and therefore they want compensation from Nantes. Effectively, they appear to be indicating that Nantes are a contributory factor to the death of this man, and we don't know, the full effects. appears to be is this negligence? Is where they're going with it? But it is very distasteful. First of all, they said, "Well, the player's not ours," and then once the player was deemed to be theirs, it became a case of, well, if it is ours, we're going to claim against somebody else. So it's very sad. It should not be played out in the public domain. And we've often said on this show that there should be more transparency as far as football is concerned. Not when you're dealing with life and the loss of life. So I don't think Cardiff are coming out of this particularly well. Now, it could be that the story was leaked and they've had to go and respond to queries from journalists, but it's not good. And in terms of will it be successful or not, is there any precedent? I guess the issue is, and we always tend to go back to this case, Carlos Tevez, when he was a West Ham player, but he was subject to third-party ownership. West Ham ended up paying around about £20 million in compensation to Sheffield United, who were relegated. I think it was on the last day of the season, because Carlos Tevez, who's a cracking footballer at West Ham and elsewhere, he scored the goals, which contributed to West Ham staying up. And Sheffield United said, well, he shouldn't have been there in the first place, so therefore we've suffered consequential loss. So that's where they're standing. I think the issue with Emiliano Sala is that we will never know, because it is pure conjecture, because he tragically lost his life, whether he would have scored the goals which would have kept Cardiff up.
Well, that's exactly my point, Kieran. I mean, I've got a couple of friends who are lawyers, and if you pay them enough money, they'll argue that black is white if necessary, and then say it's their job to do so. But I can't see, with Tevez, you can demonstrably prove that he scored goals at one matches that gave West Ham points. At the same time, I don't see how any lawyer can argue that Salah would have done that. He may have got injured. It's crass for us to talk about it now, but it's an argument. And as you say, it just shouldn't be happening. It's just, anyway. Let's move on, Kieran, and let's leave a little pause between talking about the death of a young man and Tough Sheet, because I think that would be respectable. But Bolton Wanderers, of course, there's a news story from Bolton Wanderers, which is a financial story, Kieran, which you love, but it won't be the Bolton Wanderers story of the year, which is that they now play at the Tough Sheet Stadium.
Yes.
They can call it the Tough Sheet Community Stadium if they wish. If they wish. But it's they do wash. It's the Tough Sheet Stadium, Kieran. And I don't know whether this next story is related to the naming of the stadium or not. I doubt it.
No. This is independent. What Bolton Wanderers are doing is that they're going down a similar route to some other clubs, and they are issuing a bond. Now, what is a bond? A bond is a corporate IOU. And the way this is going to work is that if you can buy individual bonds for £500 as a fan, or even just as a broad investor, and Bolton Wanderers are willing to pay 80.5% interest on an annual basis, and should they be in the Championship for the 2024-25 season, a 10% promotion bonus. So that's a far bigger return than you'll get from sticking your money A, under the bed, or B, in your ISA. Certainly it's a cash ISA. So why so much? And the aim here is that Bolton are aiming to raise £4 million as a result of this bond. They will see there is precedent. Norwich have done it. They repaid the money. QPR raised 6.8 million. I think Norwich raised about 4 million. We've got the Wimbledon bond, and we've got Peterborough as well. And the reason why the interest rate appears high is that ultimately these are unsecured loans. So you are giving your money to Bolton Wanderers in good faith, as you had done with Norwich, with Queen's Park Rangers, with Wimbledon, and so on. And it's cheaper for the club to borrow from the fans this way. Because what are the alternatives to raising money this week? Well, Bolton Wanderers could have gone to its local high street bank and said, can you lend us some money? And the bank manager would say, thanks, but no thanks. it's too risky as far as the industry is concerned, and we don't want reputational damage in the sense that if things do become problematic, we don't want to be seen as the big bad wolf that is calling in the administrators to try to recover our money. So high street banks won't touch the football industry, especially, and the new owners do appear to be very good, but Bolton has had a bit of a checkered history. Therefore you go to the specialist lenders, the likes of Macquarie, the likes of MSD Holdings. Well, West Brom are paying interest at 14%, so far higher. So borrowing effectively, from the fan base or people who are interested, is an alternative. Can we guarantee that money will be repaid? You can't guarantee anything in life. Norwich's was repaid. QPR seemed to be fine as well. Peterborough, we had the posh bond, and now, of course, there's the company that owns Peterborough Stadium has gone into receivership. That looks a little bit messy. Does that mean that the bond will be not repaid? No, there's no evidence of that, but it certainly nudges up on my riskometer. Where I would put that particular item, but increasing risk isn't the same as saying it's a no-show. So it's an interesting one. I'm not qualified to recommend or not recommend it, and I don't think it would be appropriate for us to do so on the show. But if you are going to lend that, it's an attractive return. It has to be said. It's an unsecured investment. Just like if investing in shares, the value can go up or down in shares. Well, here, in terms of getting your money back in due course, that is dependent upon the club's financial position. And I do think that Bolton these days appear to be, to me, are a well-run club.
Yeah, oddly enough, Kieran, just yesterday I looked both under the bed and in my ISA to see if there was any money there, and the answer was no, there wasn't in either. Two things off the back of this, Kieran. Presumably, people investing in this bond there will be terms and conditions, and somewhere on that it will say your money is at risk if you invest in this scheme. And secondly, is this one of those things where people can take the money out and it's say, right, I'd quite like my money back now, or will it be a minimum 1 year, 2 year, 3 years before you get your return?
No, the nature of a bond is that they are fixed periods as a rule. Okay. Yes, I mean, there will. I think they're using the Tifisos site as a means of raising the money, and other clubs have gone down that route. You will be given a warning notice, and then I would imagine you have probably made the decision before you read the warning notice. But I think that as an issuer of the bonds, you have a legal obligation to say your money is at risk. Yeah,
not far down the road, Kieran. Unsurprisingly, Wigan players have publicly getting a bit snippy with a giant WTF this week to the owners.
Yes, this is Stephen Kalkner, and he uses the media site LinkedIn, as do many people who are on LinkedIn as a means of networking, and he put some fairly pithy comments with regards to how he feels that the club has been run. Yeah, we're aware that Wigan Athletic have now failed to pay people on time on 5 occasions, and this affects both playing staff and non-playing staff. But I think what was interesting from his point of view, he said, I could buy a football club for £1, which you can. I could use it to advertise my products, which you can, and then I would choose to just pay the 5 to 6 players who are assets, and everybody else can go to hell in a handcart. We can't comment upon that, but I wasn't aware until reading his comment that we thought that all of the players were receiving their salaries late. If it's being targeted as to those players who have the most transfer value, that does seem quite cynical. Wigan, I think, have gone from frying pan into fire over the course of the last 3 owners and an administration. We had they're owned by a Far East company. Then the club was sold to Al Young. That lasted about 3 weeks before the club into administration. We had Andy Burnham on, we had Wigan Supporters Trust on the show, because there was genuine concerns. New owners came in, broadly based in Bahrain. Everybody thinks Middle East equals loads of money, but it's not been good. It's not been a good relationship since then.
Well, Kieran, if Stephen Corker's allegations are true, that some players actually have been paid, then that blows the owner's excuses for not paying them out of the water, because he's been blaming local issues with banking and direct debits and standing orders and all sorts of stuff, transfers not happening. So if that's the case, then they're lies, aren't they? If Stephen Corker's telling the truth, then the club owners are lying, and there's got to be some sanctions for
that. Yes, I mean, I think that there are rules with regards to if a club is X days late on, I think on 2 or 3 occasions in terms of paying staff, then the players are entitled to walk away. So therefore, it could be that the club's protecting its position. I'm not justifying what the club's done, but I'm explaining what the rationale behind their behaviour. But it doesn't reflect well on the club, and some of the justifications which have been given caused. When we're known to raise an eyebrow quizzically on this show. Well, I think eyebrows would have hit stratospheric levels with some of the excuses which have been given.
And it appears, Kieran, we may have a resolution to the Yeovil Town saga. Yes.
The takeover is complete. So this is good. I mean, Scott Priestnall, who I think we've been pretty critical of. He bought the club as recently as 2019. He had a relationship. There's a very good article summarising the position in The Athletic with Matt Slater, and I'm not encouraging people to take out a subscription to the Athletic. We're not on commission for them, but I do think very highly of Matt. He's a first-rate investigative journalist. There appeared to be a sort of a working relationship between Scott Priestnall and a guy called Jed McCrory, and I'd sort of hinted at things in a recent show. The reason I didn't want to go any further is that I think a few of us had seen documents, planning permission for hotels, care homes on the site of Huish Park, where Yeovil Town play football. We were getting the vibes that Scott Priestnall's heart wasn't particularly in owning a football club. And one of the things that we've always said on this show, that football club and stadium have to be intertwined and have to be protected. It looks as if Scott Priestnall did have other ideas for where Yeovil Town play football. Those ideas have come to nothing because we do have a local company who have now taken them over, and we wish them well. And I think if they I've had contact with one of them, and what we would say is be transparent, engage with the fans, take the rough times as well as the good, because there's always rough times in owning a football club, and best wishes for the future. If
I was a less mature person, Kieran, I would have got you to say Huish Park again, just so I could go, bless you. I was this next story, Kieran. I was about to say Birmingham City have been given a slap on the wrist, but it's not even a slap on the wrist. It's kind of the football equivalent of the quizzical look I get from Ali when I come back from the car without the milk. Basically, it's not going to terrify them, is it? It's this quizzical look they've been given by the EFL.
Yes, Birmingham City have been given a 2 points suspended penalty, taking them up to, I think, the 24-25 season. And the reason for this is in respect of breaches of owners and directors regulations. In particular, shadow control of the club, in the sense that from a legal point of view, the club was and still is just about owned by Von Peck, although we have seen an American investor now has bought 46%, and therefore that's going to trigger an owners and directors issue with the EFL, but I think that should be fine. But this was all to do with the fact that Von Peck was the owner, but it appeared to be controlled on a day-to-day basis by Maxi Lopez and, more concerningly, Matt Southall, one of the people who, how he's still allowed anywhere near a football club is beyond me, in the sense that they were able to effectively employ people to run the club on a day-to-day basis without formally being directors, without formally being in control of the club. So the EFL said, we've looked beyond the legal position. We've seen what was happening on an operational basis. We're not very happy about it. We don't want to see that happening again. Now, if ownership is transferred completely, then I don't see this being an issue. But I also don't see what else the EFL could have done. This is indicative of organisations have constitutions and rules, and they do apply these very rigorously these days at the EFL. I think it's just trying to give a warning to other clubs. If there's anybody thinking of going down a similar route, we are watching you.
This strikes me, Kieran. I mean, we often talk about the unfairness of points deduction on fans who have done nothing wrong. In this case, it's a couple of blokes who have done this, and it seems to me that this is one area where the club shouldn't be punished. It's just these two blokes should just be told by the EFL that they will never be allowed to run another football club again.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have been banned from football, but it's for months, and we've seen the likes of Lawrence Bassini be banned from football for a number of years. But just like a weed you pluck in the garden, they have a habit of coming up later. Even if you cut off the heads, you got to get the roots. There's been the guy that owned Bolton for a short period of time. He had been banned previously from football, but you giving a lifelong sentence, I think, is a route that the authorities don't want to go down. I think they take the view that people can change, people can improve, and give appropriately severe sentences to act as a deterrent rather than lifelong bans.
Yeah, for our next pod, Kieran, let's see if we can find any evidence of a wrong'un changing. I'd love to change the wrong'un status to right'un, but I think we'll struggle. You're being very poetic today with your metaphors, your gardening. This is the dead Kennedys. It's got you excited, isn't it?
It is indeed. Yes, and you should see the support band whose name I'm not allowed to say on a family show such as this. I say no more than that.
And they're probably about 68 as well, aren't they?
Yeah, they probably are. Yes.
I don't know if it's appropriate to reveal this, Kieran, but I thought it was very touching when I asked you to do a sound check at Leicester, and you did a Dead Kennedys song as your sound check.
I did Holiday in Cambodia. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you would have done the whole thing had I not instructed the sound man to turn the microphone off.
Yes.
This episode of The Price of Football is brought to you by Manscaped. With summer approaching fast, Manscaped is here to ensure your body is ready for the wild with their game-changing grooming and hygiene products. Don't be the guy at the beach with Austin Powers chest hair. It's time to get ready for summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the code PRICEOFFOOTBALL.
Manscaped is dedicated to helping increase your confidence and level up your full body grooming game with the Performance Package 4.0. The kit comes with the essential Lawnmower 4.0 waterproof, cordless body trimmer and a ton of other liquid formulations to turn round your grooming routine. Whether you're trimming your chest or the treasure chest in your pants, this is the best trimmer on the market. It features a ceramic blade designed to cut hair on loose skin and to reduce grooming accidents, thanks to its advanced skin-safe technology. Having the right tools for grooming is essential. Do yourself a favour and always use the right tools for the job.
So get 20% off and free shipping with the code PRICEOFFOOTBALL at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code PRICEOFFOOTBALL. This is a slightly bizarre story, Kieran, involving the bizarre notion of a 20-year-old businessman trying to buy a football club.
Yeah, trying to buy a football club 150 miles from where he lives. So this is, again, it's one of those clubs which is appearing on this show on too frequent a basis. It's Morecambe FC. And there's also been a pronouncement on the club website, and I think Morecambe is I think the word begins with cluster, and I'll let people complete it at their own will. I know sometimes people are listening to this in the car with their children.
Yes, of course, absolutely.
So I'm trying to be less potty mouthed, especially as. When my eldest granddaughter hears the show quite often, which is quite often in the car, she goes, "It's Grandpa," and then and then Mum will say, "What's Grandma talking about?" And my granddaughter goes, "Football, blah blah blah." So that's where we are. That I think that should be that be on our poster for our autumn tour.
Never mind that. That's our next podcast. Football, blah blah blah. That's On a similar note, I once told I won't name him Kieran because it's a shameful thing that he did. I was on 5 Live once, and the host of the show, shall we say, questioned the existence of Father Christmas, which of course really annoyed me, as you know. But I said, you can't say the people will be listening to this in their car with their kids. You can't be doing that sort of thing. And then sure enough, within a minute, he'd had about 200 tweets saying, "You utter prick." I had to stop the car and console my crying child that the funny man on the radio wasn't being funny. Yes, because of course there's a Father Christmas in case people are listening. Yes. But anyway, so the Shrimps Trust have published an open letter to a 20-year-old, which it strikes me as, if it's on Instagram, he might see it. Otherwise, Kieran, I don't see. Certainly, if you put it in the post, he ain't going to read it, is he? So,
yes. So this is addressed to Sarbjot Chahal and his company, and effectively they said, "Look, you've been trying to buy Morecambe since since December, and there's 2 things you need to provide the EFL with source of funds, i.e., you claiming he sells some sort of energy drink." But of which nobody's heard. And also, you've got to indicate how you're going to fund the club for the next 2 years, provide future. And this is all part of the owners and directors test. And again, I feel for the EFL here. They've got a tough job. They know that we as fans and lovers of the game believe that they should be custodians and monitor things. So therefore, they do that, and then they come up against people either delaying for legitimate reasons or delaying for slightly less legitimate reasons. And this has been dragging on. There was a really good statement on the club website, and I think this is here where we've got a difference between the good people at Morecambe are people who are on the board, who are not the same as the owners. And it was pretty damning in terms of what they thought of the owners. And we've got a ridiculous situation now that because the current owners, the Bond Group, who also own Worcester Warriors rugby club, which has gone into administration and is effectively no more. And I know one person involved with the Bond Group was also had links with Jed McCrory, who was Scott Priestnall's buddy in respect of Yeovil Town. So as soon as you start, the tendrils of this expand, and you just feel very uneasy. Bond Group has said, "Look, we're not willing to put any more money in the club." So as it stands, Morecambe currently have 6 players on their payroll because everybody else has been released, and the club's been relegated. It's easy to drop from League One to League Two to National League very, very rapidly, as fans of the likes of Scunthorpe and Southend and Rochdale will testify. Oldham, and you do fear because. We've said on the show that the National League is, compared to the EFL, is relatively unregulated. And therefore, it's a bit of a Wild West down there. And unless you do have money, it's actually quite difficult to return to the EFL if you do drop out.
Well, the other fear, Kieran, as well. I mean, there's always, well, certainly since starting this pod, there's always a slight cynicism when anybody takes over a football club. There's a worry that they're after the assets, the land the club is on, rather than the club itself. But that fear is multiplied whenever a team has a ground that's within spitting distance of the coast, because obviously, they're prime real estate. You know, you talking about building seaside hotels. That's always a worry, isn't it, for coastal clubs? See Southend, for example.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've taught at Lancaster University, and then the nearest football club to Lancaster University is Morecambe, and it's a very quaint town, and it has value and it has beauty, and part of the beauty is having a football club.
Yeah, my father-in-law, God rest his soul, had a mantra. He had many mantras, Kieran, mainly involving ways of getting from London to Birmingham. But in particular, he always used to say that money goes to money. And this next story kind of indicates that, because the poor, potless owners of Wrexham, Kieran, worry no more.
Yes, step forwards, Mr. McElhenney and Mr. Reynolds. You just got £17 million as a grant from the Welsh government. It has to be said that in the Welsh government, both locally and on a national basis, have been pretty positive towards football clubs. Both Cardiff and Swansea have been beneficiaries. So this grant is to expand the racecourse ground to 16,000 capacity, and I think there's a fair chance that they'll be pretty close to capacity next season.
Absolutely.
And League Two, we've seen Bradford City, for example, get 22,000, which
Incredible.
is brilliant.
Yeah.
With the aim of being able to host internationals once more.
Yeah.
So that's all positive. My view, money coming into individual towns. If it brings in a few more concerts, if it allows them to host internationals, that's good for the local economy. So could that money have been spent on other projects? Yes, it could. Could it be spent on this project? Yes, it could. So I'm not saying that this is a better or worse one. Reynolds and McElhenney paid £2 million for the club, and they paid £2 million for the stadium. And now they're getting a £17 million piece of financial assistance. So the cynics will say, well, this is money coming to money. But they have made a huge positive impact upon the town. And if it allows more people to go, and if it allows the local economy to thrive a little bit further, then the return on that investment by the government, hopefully will be a positive one.
Well, also the short-term boost in terms of employment as well, because you're going to need several hundred people to build this, to expand this, who hopefully will be locally based companies. But also, it's good to see someone in government, even if it's indirectly, acknowledging that football is part of their remit as well.
Yes, it's now a tourist. Spot point, isn't it? As far
absolutely.
As especially as far as the American market is concerned.
Yeah.
So therefore, why not leverage on that? And it doesn't. If it was a theme park, if it was a hotel, if it was an entertainment place that was going to bring in more jobs and more money to the economy, I think everybody would say just go for it. Because of the nature of the people involved, it's going to involve a little bit more scrutiny. But I think it's more of a positive than a negative, personally.
Yeah, and let's face it, Kieran, we can't. What Wrexham fans have been through over the last couple of decades, you can't really begrudge it. Really,
No.
We're not in the business of begrudging anything that happens to football fans, Kieran. Really, we're on their side. Chelsea fans, for example, Kieran, have had talking of money going to money. Chelsea fans have had some. Good news. I'm going to get really told off for that. There's got several fans who are Chelsea mates go, we're all posh, It's like, but the irony being that they're really posh. My mates who support Chelsea, but they put on these faux London accents to say we're not all posh, But good news for Chelsea fans, Kieran.
Yes, we have seen the vast majority of Premier League clubs announce price increases. as far as season tickets are concerned. And some of them have been double digit, some of them have been more modest. But Chelsea, on the back of a Todd Bowley inspired recruitment drive over the course of the summer, and as you know, I'm not a member of the Todd Bowley fan club, have decided to freeze season ticket prices for 24-25. And on top of that, and the clubs acknowledge, fans are facing a cost of living crisis. We do have significant inflation, especially on those products which impact upon people who have less money: food, clothing, shelter, heat and light, and so on. So they've done that, and so fair play to the club for doing that, and also fair play to Todd Bowley for ensuring that he's saving Chelsea fans further money as they're not competing in Europe next season, and therefore they don't have to go and pay extra for travel and those particular matches.
Yes, at our live show last week, and I promise it'll be the last reference I make to it, I almost literally had to throw myself in front of you to stop you from telling the audience why you're not a fan of Todd Bowley, especially as a Times journalist was getting his pen out.
Yes.
As you started to explain. It's good news if you're a fan of Chelsea women, obviously, at the weekend, Kieran, but a slight anomaly in the money that they made out of winning the FA Cup.
Yes, the FA Cup winners get £100,000 as far as the women's competition is concerned. That compares to £2 million for the men's competition. You think, well, hold on, that's a factor of 20.
Yeah.
It was sold out at Wembley.
Yeah.
Now, I know the ticket price. Now, the prices for the men's FA Cup final, separate issue. Yeah, they're obscene. In my view. I would have been. I'll be honest. I would have paid it had event been slightly different. But yeah, these differences are challenging. We've seen in other sports there has been an equalisation of prize money. I absolutely understand that the FA will say, well, it's the money coming into the game which gives them the ability to pay the money again. If we take a look at the semi-final, and this does pay me to say, as the losing team in an FA Cup semi-final, Brighton Hove Albion's men's team got £500,000.
Yeah.
Brighton Hove Albion's women's team were also losing. Lost in the semi-final, and they got 12,500.
Yes,
That's just nuts.
Your men's team got 5 times more money for losing in the semi-final than Chelsea women got for winning in the final.
Yeah,
but so sold out Wembley. They're not getting any money from Wembley being sold out.
No. I mean, but that is normally the case. I mean, right. It's the FA it's the FA's home. It's the FA sells the tickets. Normally, you get gate receipts as you go through the competition. You pay off the expenses of hosting the match, and then the money is, I think it's split 45-45 between the two teams, and then the FA pick up 10% or something like that. It does seem anomalous. I know there's been a campaign to have equalisation. I'm not sure we're quite there yet in terms of the money coming in. And also, I think that would cause problems for the WSL in general, because if you had the club winning the women's competition earning £2 million, you've got clubs in the Women's Super League who are only getting £2 million from a full season.
Yeah.
It could distort the competitive balance within the WSL, but to have a 20 times multiple difference, difficult to justify. The FA, I know it's not awash with money, but it could do a bit better.
Yeah, and I suppose if you support Durham or Lewis or Clapton, any of the, for want of a better word, smaller women's teams, they will say the competition's already distorted, and as is likely in the next 10 years, it's only going to be Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, Man United women winning the FA Cup. Then if it was £2 million, all you're doing is giving the 4 richest teams more money every year anyway. So, but if you're an Arsenal women's fan, there's good news for you as well.
Yes, Arsenal played 3 matches at the Emirates this season. They played against Spurs and Chelsea, both of which attracted an attendance of 47,000. Manchester United 40,000. So those are absolutely brilliant. And they play their other games at Meadow Park, where they've been averaging 4,000. Now, there has been pressure on clubs, and I think you've got to get this right, because Spurs played Brighton in the WSL at White Hart Lane, and it is White Hart Lane as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And that attracted 4,000. So you've got to choose the right match and the right opponents. But Arsenal have now realised, well, actually, we're not losing money from having these matches at the Emirates. If we're getting 40,000, this is a big event. Arsenal's women's team, a day out at the Emirates is a great day, as I can testify myself.
Yeah. What a performance, Kieran. Even I, if I was in the habit of wearing a hat, I would have doffed it. Because that was a fantastic performance by your team on Sunday. It really was top quality.
Yes, we were. We were pinching ourselves, but lovely. But
if you could locate the lad with the drum and take it off him, that would be great.
Yeah, that's the Arsenal Ultras.
Was it Arsenal?
Yeah. Oh, they're trying to replicate your Homesdale Fanatics.
Well, it's not working. I see. Of course, it should have occurred to me. If it had been Brighton, it would have been a marimba band of some sort, I imagine.
And we wouldn't have worn black. We'd have been.
That's true.
We'd have been. We'd have been pastel. But what Arsenal have realised now, that if you put on the right product, if you make it attractive, you get the pricing right, you will get 40,000.
Yeah.
Turning up. And you start to make money. So now, next season, they're committing themselves to play 5 games at the Emirates. And I'll be honest, Spurs and Chelsea and Manchester United will be 3 of the chosen opponents. I suspect the others probably Manchester City, because Manchester City women's team are very successful. Perhaps it could be West Ham as well, because again, such to sell it as a London derby. Yeah. Perhaps to have they might have a special season ticket for those 5 matches. But it does show that if you build towards it, if you make it an enjoyable experience, you will get the right numbers. And I think this is the biggest challenge for the game, because if you don't get that right, if you talk to the women who are playing, 4,000 people turning up in a 60,000 capacity stadium isn't fun. But there is certainly an audience there.
Well, also, Kieran, and the broadcasters will point blank deny this in public, but we know some of them, so we know it's true. The broadcasters don't like if they're showing Tottenham versus Brighton from White Hart Lane, they don't want to be showing 4,000 people rattling. They would much rather that game was played at a 4,000 seat stadium, so it looks full. Yeah. So they are, without any doubt, putting indirect pressure on the clubs about where they're playing the game. And now, Kieran, I listened to the news on the radio this morning because I was up early, by my standards, 10 to 9. You'd have done a couple of hour spreadsheets, a bit of cycling, walked the dog, and spoken to 3 journalists by then. But I was up early because Ali's working, so the cat decided I had to feed her. And she punishes me, Kieran, by putting her head in my water. How can that happen?
That's outrageous.
I know, but on the news this morning, it's announced that the government are to do a proper investigation into the whole cryptocurrency thing. They talked about 5 million people in this country investing, gambling is the word they used, on assets that don't actually exist. So it's encouraging to hear that. And this next story would be grist to the government's mill.
Yes, and as somebody that presented to a parliamentary committee last month, I was pretty impressed with the level of knowledge and the sort of the granular and forensic approach that was taken by the MPs on the committee. So politicians come in for a lot of criticism, some of which is justified, but for every headliner, there are lots of good constituency MPs who want the best, and that's regardless of where they stand on the political spectrum. In my experience,
well, it's like Tracy Crouch told us, Kieran. I've heard this from other. The real work of government goes on in, as you say, in committees and back rooms with politicians from all parties working together to get things done on a quietly efficient basis.
Yes. This is an organisation called the Fans Together, which was crypto based. And again, you got to thank our very Rottweiler-like Twitter contributor Martin Calladine, known as Ugly Game. Follow him on Twitter. He gets down and dirty with the bad guys. They were interested in acquiring a stake in Sunderland when Donald and Methven were there, and surprise, the organisation has now gone bust. Its website no longer exists, and whether it took the money of people with it, I don't know the exact details, but once again, it shows the risk of the football industry being blinded by the check and being willing to accept money from an unregulated, highly volatile and easily manipulated set of services. And I'm glad the government is getting involved in this, because this is gambling with a small g. And you and I, we've always said we both gamble ourselves. I don't like some of the business practices of the industry, but there is an element of reservation, even to the extent that the cynic in me thinks that the gambling industry does the bare minimum to avoid any further regulation, but at least it is doing the bare minimum. When it comes to the world of crypto, there are no rules. There is no sense of governance. And it's full of Shylocks with a get rich quick mentality, it is classic Springfield monorail.
Yes, I'm one of those terrible hypocrites with it, because I don't think I do gamble. Because me having a £10 bet on a Saturday every week is just having a. It's of course it's gambling, and it's the thin end of the wedge. I have to work hard to make sure I only have that one £10 bet and don't try and chase my losses when it inevitably goes down the toilet. You mentioned earlier, Kieran, about the National League being slightly more laissez-faire regulation-wise than the EFL and the Premier League. And this story would kind of seem to indicate that, wouldn't it? Yes.
Southend United are currently under an embargo. As we speak, we're recording this on the Wednesday. I think they're due in court again.
Yeah.
I'm a bit more relaxed than normal, and hopefully that will come to those reasons will come to light in the forthcoming weeks. But should they still be under an embargo at the start of the 23-24 season, they will be allowed to compete in the National League. And to be fair, this is the same at the EFL. Reading are currently under a form of embargo, and there is other clubs have sailed fairly close to it. But the downside, of course, is that if you are under a transfer embargo, and the nature of the National League is that most players are on 1 or 2 year contracts, it makes your summer recruitment an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
So you will be able to compete, but you'll be competing with one hand tied behind your back.
Kieran, you say you're a bit more relaxed than normal about this higher court appearance. So either you've started drinking, or are you indicating that you might have some good news for Southend fans coming up here?
I'm feeling more positive about Southend than I was.
Well, great. Okay. Well,
say a month ago, but more positive. Yeah, let's face it. More positive isn't the same as positive. It means, if I was sort of at a 1 or 2 on the happiness scale a month ago, I'm probably at a 3 or a 4 now.
Oh, okay, right. So you take up drinking, Kieran. Yeah, you get you up to 6 at least. 2 more stories, Kieran, both involving tournaments, different levels. There was a lot of talk recently about possibly moving the Champions League final if you had 2 teams from the far west of Europe taking it away from Istanbul, but it could be taken away from Istanbul for very different reasons by the look of things, Kieran.
Yes, I mean the reason why UEFA have chosen Istanbul is the stadium passed the checks and balances and tests. And, there's no reason why it shouldn't be. Yeah, and just because it's in Western Europe, as we saw in Paris last year, does not mean that fans are going to be treated well or that fans are going to be necessarily safe. So I think we have to take any sort of inappropriate prejudice that sometimes we have, and I try not to be guilty of that, but I'm sure I am. But because of political uncertainties there is the new presidential elections were inconclusive, so it's going to go to a runoff with Erdogan. Erdogan's, I think it's fair to say, pretty authoritarian in nature. There are many people in Turkey who, following the tragedy of the recent earthquake, have been pointing fingers, A, at the lax building regulations, and B, at the pretty insipid response from government authorities. And this is always a danger with an authoritarian regime, in that it tends to become a grace and favour country, and that means that standards drop. So it could be therefore transferred to Lisbon if UEFA feel that there is sufficient unhappiness on the streets to make an Istanbul final not safe for people to attend. So it's on the 10th of June, which is ridiculously late, but that's a function of having a Winter World Cup, of course, and it's going to be potentially involving Manchester City attending, and I'm sure people will be tearing themselves away from the thought of me watching the Dead Kennedys and possibly watching the football tonight to see whether they make that progress.
It's slightly presumptuous to assume, Kieran, that people might go and watch you watching the Dead Kennedys. Yes. And how many more times does Mr. Infantino have to tell you, Kieran, it was only a Winter World Cup for us? For some people, it was a Summer World Cup. And talking of the summer, those poor, hard done by big clubs who think there are far too many games for their terribly tired players. Well, they found a strange way of proving that, Kieran, haven't they?
That's right. The Soccer Champions Tour is coming. The Soccer Champions is coming to Texas. It's coming to California. And this involves AC Milan, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Juventus, Arsenal, and Manchester United. It's been organised by Sixth Street, who are an American investment house. I think it's fair to say that all of these clubs were part of European Super League. And I think it's fair to say that Sixth Street would have been high-fiving them had that particular tournament gone ahead. Because what they wanted in Super League was, of course, a reduction in the size of domestic leagues, ideally to 16 teams. They probably would have accepted 18. In order for an expanded Super League to take place, and B, to set aside more time for these types of activities. So this is 8 matches taking place over a 10-day period in July and August. It will attract big audiences. That they are big names as far as football is concerned, but I think it's further evidence of we are moving towards the Disneyfication of the game. Ultimately, these are extended warm-up sessions as far as the players are concerned, but they'll attract big audiences and they'll generate significant amounts of revenue for the clubs involved, and of course the Sixth Street itself.
Yeah, Palace are playing 2 games in the States in the summer, except they're not calling it 2 games. It's some tournament or other, because you can't just play 2 games. It has to be some kind of they seem to think that calling it some tournament or other against, I think there's a Venezuelan team and an American team, is going to encourage more Palace fans to spend several £1,000s flying out to go and watch it. I don't think it's going to happen, Mr. Parrish. Our next Price of Football live show will take place at Plymouth. Finally, Kieran. Finally, yes. About the 15th time of asking, we are going to Plymouth, Home Park Stadium on Tuesday, the 6th of June. That's unless there's a D-Day commemoration that we've overlooked that will stop us getting there. The place is full of tanks and landing boats. Tickets are now available from Plymouth Argyle's website. They are selling quickly, but we look forward to seeing you down there. It's a place dear to my heart, so I'm very much looking forward to going down and meeting you all. And thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page recently, including Dean Madden, Todd Johnson, Adam Pendlebury, Hanson Ho, Steve Greatbatch, Bryn Dyer, Ross Wilson and Ian Mason. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, that would be very kind of you. You can do so by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on our Monday question show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And in the meantime, I shall hand you over to a very excited, dead Kennedy-bound Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you, everybody, at Patreon. And for as little as £1 a month, you can support the show that way. And we're really looking forward to coming to Plymouth. I absolutely loved the day out in Leicester last week. And there's other ways you can support the show, as well as attending the gigs and Patreon and so on. And that's to give us a review, because that helps us in the charts. That helps us with a bit of credibility when we're trying to put guests on the show. And we've got quite a long list of guests. And for anybody that's got any interest in Scottish football, remember we've got Neil Doncaster, Chief Executive of the SPFL, coming on soon. So just drop a line to questions at Price of Football. But if you give us a review, by all accounts, the important thing is give us a review. It doesn't really matter what you say. There's not artificial intelligence that reads the reports. So you could even say you would have the show presented by the former richest man in the world, Elon Musk, head of Twitter, and the man that wrote Holiday in Cambodia, Jello Biafra, the one of the great unsung heroes of punk rock.
I've got a feeling neither of them will have heard of either of them. When you say artificial intelligence doesn't read the reviews, producer Guy does. So what are you implying? Let's leave that there. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.